Hello, my name is Stephen Smith, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of NOCD. I'm here joined by my good friend, Chrissie Hodges.
Hello, everyone. I am Chrissie. You might know me from doing videos on YouTube talking about all things pure OCD, which is also the name of my book, shameless promotion. Woohoo! And I'm a certified peer support specialist. Stephen and I have known each other for God knows how long, 10 years?
10 years, long time.
A long time. So it is good to be here. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Chrissie. Another great conversation in the making. And there's a good topic today, and that topic is about peer support. Not many people know this, but Chrissie, you and I have a lot of great conversations over the years about peer support and the role that it can play. And I know there's a lot of great work that you've been doing in the peer support arena. So I think it might be helpful to start this conversation by just talking a little bit about peer support and the role it has in the treatment of OCD and related conditions.
Yeah, thank you. So peer support, if you don't know, is a supplemental support for individuals who are living with any sort of mental illness. So this isn't particular for OCD. However, I have adapted my own practice and group support and things like that, particularly for OCD, because I have lived experience with OCD. When I first started out doing peer support, however, I worked in the community. I worked at drop-in center. I worked at the state institution doing peer work on multidisciplinary teams, particularly as part of the trauma-informed care team. So I really learned what it meant to be a peer support from my professional colleagues that are dedicated to trauma-informed care, which has then shaped what I do now and why I feel like peer support is so successful with OCD. So peer support is, again, a supplemental support to therapy. It is not meant to replace therapy at all. And in fact, peer support specialists are trained, and it's one of our core competencies. We do not give advice, and we do not give any sort of therapeutic tools. What we do is use our lived experience to meet individuals where they're at, wherever that is in recovery. Now, you may think, well, I don't understand why that's any different than just talking to a friend. So why would I pay for peer support if I can just call up my buddies? Well, your buddies are likely going to give you advice, which is not what we do. Your buddies are likely going to just listen to you until they can talk back. Because active listening takes practice and training, and your buddies also don't know how to show up and support when it comes to mental health, right? So yes, choose your friends and buddies and family if they're a great support system. But if you want professional support, peer supports are typically trained in training in the core competencies and whatever their state provides, supervision from a clinical professional, as well as continued education in order to certify in their state and continue to have a certification if they continue being a peer support. I started doing peer support on my own because I recognized the need specifically for OCD, because people get better with treatment, right? And you can get better with ERP. But lots of people, especially with taboo intrusive thoughts, sexual, violent, blasphemous, intrusive thoughts or any sort of thoughts they don't want to disclose to anyone around them, they were having a high degree of shame, guilt, embarrassment, inability to kind of move on in their life because of they were just stuck in those heavy emotions. Peer support is so beneficial for that, especially because I've been through it too. I've been through the grief of this. So being able to have people meet me and disclose some of this stuff with zero judgment, I meet them where they're at, it can be incredibly healing for people. So it's been an amazing journey the last 5 or so years, being able to support people all over the world doing this work. I've learned so much about my own recovery just by, so-and-so will say, well, this one time I experienced this, and I'll identify something in my own story. So it furthers my healing as well. So peer support is a wonderful tool. If you are able to access it, we'll give my information here once we're done. But in any mental health disorder, peer support is just such a wonderful supplement. My goal and hope for mental health moving forward is every person in the world that has mental health struggles deserves to have a peer walking alongside them.
Wow. Fantastic, Chrissie. Thank you for sharing all that. I want to highlight one point in particular for those that are listening. There's a difference between someone with lived experience and someone who is who has lived experience and is a licensed peer support specialist.
Yeah.
Right. Because someone with lived experience, they may, like your buddy, listen to you and hear you out and can relate to you on a very personal level, but they may not have the licensure and the training that goes alongside a peer support specialist. Would you be able to, Chrissy, just reinforce that? Because I think it's a really important distinction, especially as there are so many people who do find benefit in connecting with others that understand them, but they may not be a licensed peer support specialist.
Yes, thank you. That's a great point. And again, we just go back to the training that peer support specialists go through. It definitely isn't like therapeutic training, but if you look at how a therapist trains, they have training, then they have supervision, and then they continue supervision with continued education. And this is on a smaller scale, peers are structured out that way too, with the components of the core competencies to be able to meet people where they're at, just like Stephen was talking about. When I had lived experience with OCD and that was it, I felt like I could go out and save the world and I could tell people my story. But again, if I don't know how to actively listen, or I don't know what to do when I'm triggered, I don't know how to have boundaries with people, I don't know how to actively show up and support someone if what they're saying is I don't recognize, or it doesn't relate to my own story, you're not only putting yourself in a bad position, but you're putting them in a bad position. Now, hear what I'm saying. If you have lived experience and you have friends that have lived experience, heck yeah, talk about it, open up, share stories. But if you're looking for someone in guidance in recovery that is a professional, you want to make sure that that person has a credential and has the training. Here's the thing. And if you're exchanging money with someone, please ask for their credential. Please. I mean, I have my credential ready to go. If anyone wants to know, I can send it over to them. It's up to date. They could even call the licensing board here in Colorado to verify it. It's really, really important because there are a lot of people out there that are taking money from people that are not credentialed and don't have any sort of training. It puts both parties in danger.
Thanks for that background, Chrissy. A NOCD peer advisor is different from a peer support specialist. So, and we're actually in the process of changing the name because of this. We want to make sure the distinction is very clear. We're going to change name to member advocate versus peer advisor. And the reason is, we have NOCD peer advisors. A lot of the folks have lived experience with OCD like myself, but also they're very operational and focused. Their goal is to make sure that our members at NOCD can have an A+ experience from the time in which they first hear about us to the time in which they're hopefully in a state of relapse prevention, where they're just managing their symptoms and looking to live healthy with OCD and not worrying about having to relapse as much if they're kind of being their own therapist correctly. So the point being is we have a very specific focus at NOCD about making sure our member advocates, that's what we're now calling them, can operationally be there with members in case there's ever an issue that they can resolve, or if they can answer any common questions. Because sometimes it's hard to go to your therapist about specific issues. Like even if your therapist, for example, is one of the issues where you don't have the right rapport with them, or they may not have the right rapport with you, then, we have to address that. And we want to make sure that there's an agent of change just alongside you in case you ever need to make an adjustment. That's why we created this role. But to distinguish between the licensed peer support specialist and our member advocates, we're basically changing the name. And that's the distinction between a peer advisor and a peer support specialist. We're changing the name peer advisor to member advocate. That's the big update that we want to give. And I think it's important because look, like we want to be working as a community together in helping people and helping as many people as possible. OCD is a term in society that everyone recognizes, but very few people actually understand. Problem with that is people as a result don't get to the right treatment, and they don't get better when they could get better, right? So if we can simply fix that issue, if we can get people to recognize and understand OCD, then make treatment not only very effective, but also very scalable with different ancillary adjunctive services like peer support and member advocates, then, I think there's a really big opportunity to solve this issue, which is people with OCD, no matter where you live and no matter how much money you make, you can get better quickly and then stay better as long as you live.
Well, and I think that member advocate, and just, I really appreciate being able to make the distinction here for NOCD members and anyone in the community that might have felt some confusion about that. Member advocate is such an appropriate name. That's what that team is doing. I've had the pleasure of being able to work alongside them, do some training with them. You have a great team of people, by the way, like really great. They are awesome people, but that's what they're doing. They're walking with you and advocating as a member. And I think that in the community, anytime, of course, I'm not trying to police language at all, but it raises flags for me anytime I hear any sort of organization saying, or even a therapist community, or just in general, we're running peer groups, we're running this, peer support this. It's like, my first question is, are you certified? The same way if someone says, I'm doing counseling for this, like counseling for whatever, you go, oh, are you licensed? Are you trained? So to be able to make the distinction is really great, because I think that they serve a really important role in NOCD, but I also think in protecting them as a way of not having members expecting peer support when they're not equipped to give it actually makes their job easier.
Totally. Well, look, it's a matter of just giving the right level of service depending on where someone is in their journey, right? And people need to have folks that they can talk to that are trained to listen, especially if they're going through really challenging subtypes of OCD that might not be as understood. We've seen, for example, in our research, that majority of people with OCD actually do have the taboo intrusive thoughts. And that's not to diminish the suffering that people with contamination and perfectionistic OCD have, but just it shows that there's so much that needs to be understood about OCD in society that isn't understood today. When we analyzed data, the majority of the OCD population from our community at least had, I would say, harm-based intrusive thoughts, so violent, sexual, and other types of fears that might be, I would say, causing that person to feel that they're going to harm others or harm themselves.
Yeah,
that's the most prevalent type. It's important though that people recognize that, because it just shows that OCD is just not a very well-known condition despite its prevalence and severity. So we're together shedding light on it, but I think there's a lot more that can be done. But then that's only half the battle, right? The other half is, how do you then get to treatment? If you have 1 in 40 people in the US and then 1 in 40 people globally, it's about 180 million people globally who at some point suffer in their life.
That's just who we know, by the way. I mean, this is just who we know. How many people out there are worried they, have intrusive thoughts about being a pedophile and are too scared to speak out? That's what's terrifying to me. We don't even know.
Yeah. And then what happens is they'll get treated as if they have anxiety, generalized anxiety, and they will get treated in a way that's not just ineffective, but it's actually harmful. And that's why, again, it's like, but that's why getting the right treatment is so important, and building up, I'd say, the right infrastructure to get people to feel understood and comfortable is important. Yeah. And so I think that's why, Chrissie, we're really appreciative of the work that you do with in the licensed peer support specialist arena. And it's also why I think it's important that people know what we do differently at NOCD and what's similar, what's different. There are 2 different services. Peer support's different from what we do as a member advocate. We're more operational, although a lot of people have that lived experience. It is much more operational. And the result of that is, we can help you kind of remove friction from that sometimes gets in the way of building a great relationship with your therapist.
Right.
And that's our goal, is we want to make that relationship as top-notch as possible. And I think it just, again, there's a lot of moving pieces, and to do it the right way, we want to give our members an A+ experience. And that's why we have member advocates. It's people who are super empathetic, super knowledgeable about OCD treatment, can answer many questions. And exactly. And they can then go and help in the operational front too, behind the scenes, to just make your experience that much easier. Think of them as like your personal agent, or if you're in the business world, you may have an account manager, right? And your account manager is dedicated to helping make sure everything goes okay, right? And we want that for our members.
Well, and if you are listening to this video and you have an interest in peer support, or you've ever thought, I think this is something I could be good at, I get this question a lot. Each state has a different avenue to go down to get certified for peer support. I think that there are, at this point, are 40, I think it's like 44 states that have a certification process. So Google peer support training for the state, for whatever state you're in, and there should be an organization that provides the training. And then from there, you can find out how many hours of training, how many hours of supervision. Or if you find a peer support job in your state, typically they'll pay for the training, which is also a great route to go if you're in a position where you can't afford to train. So we need more people doing peer support. It's been a long time coming to get the amount of people in this position and the integrity of this position, and for people to really start recognizing in the system how valuable peer support is. There's been studies done. There will hopefully be more studies done of the efficacy and effectiveness on people who receive peer support versus who don't. But listen, y'all, it's such an amazing career. And working in the system as a peer is challenging. It can make your recovery better. So if you're interested, please seek that out. And if you ever have questions about it, feel free to email me or go through my website at chrissiehodges.com. Or if you're interested in peer support services for your own recovery, please go through my website at chrissiehodges.com. And I would love to support you wherever you're at in your recovery. And Stephen, thank you for all you do. Again, just a shout out to the member advocates. Y'all are awesome. And it has been so great to get to know you. And if you're watching, miss you.
Yeah. And I'll say too, if you need help with OCD, right, you can book a call at NOCD.com and someone on our team will either help you get connected with the licensed therapist that specializes in OCD and ERP from our network. Then you can do live face-to-face sessions with you. And then between sessions, you get support from different peer communities. Again, it's different from peer support, just people that are like you in the community. And also different self-help tools, right, that can help you engage in ERP between sessions if you need it. And you'll have your member advocate, you'll have your other folks too along the way. You know, if that's not the right fit though too, like we also understand that. We want to make sure you can get the right treatment, and we can connect you to another licensed therapist that might be a better fit. We don't, for example, do in person. It's 100% virtual. We understand our goal though is just to make sure that you can get to the right care. And we know that's like the most important part. If you have OCD, it's just getting to the right treatment, because there's so much treatment out there, but there's only very specific types of treatment that are effective that we know. Exposure and response prevention, for example, is the treatment that you need, and your therapist needs like specific training in it if you're going to get better. So wanted to highlight that as well. And yeah, thank you for your time today. And
of course, anytime. We should do this more often.
I know. This is great. And sorry, I'm so all over the place, but it seems like that's how every conversation is. So I should stop.
I'm just here to make
Yeah. Great. All right.
Well, thanks everybody. Hope y'all have a good day.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.